Hi, I'll be your host, Carl. Welcome back to another episode of Streetwise English, where we have interviews and conversations with our American friends to help you improve your listening comprehension and pick up new words and vocabulary for spoken English. You can find more about what we do on streetwiseenglish.com. Today, our guest is Dagwood Streets, who is the owner of the Electric Scooter podcast. He is joining us again after being in the last episode 5. This is the first time he's going on the record and telling his story about when he was in a knife fight as a young man about 18 years old in the United States Navy. For his first assignment, he was sent to an aircraft carrier. During his very first day of work on the aircraft carrier, he was in a knife fight. Let's hear his story.
So this story is about when I was in the Navy. I was an air traffic controller, and the division I was posted to was called the Carrier Air Traffic Control Center, or CATC. And the Navy was trying to save money on rehabbing. That's the word we use, but it's kind of like if you're talking about houses, you'd say remodeling, right? Upgrading the ships by using the sailors on board to do the upgrades. What this meant was we would go into what's called dry dock. So your ship, which I was on an aircraft carrier, it's massive, holds like 5,000 people. It goes up and kind of out of the water, and the people at the dockyards can work on the exterior of the ship. And the sailors at this time, the program was SLEP, S-L-E-P. It was an acronym for something. And it meant that the sailors would redo the decks or the floors and the bulkheads or the walls. We'd do all the painting. We would remodel the bathrooms and all that kind of thing, just using whatever skills that we had. And I was sent to a division during this, I think it's 3-month period in Long Beach, California, which that's a whole nother story too, because Long Beach at that time was a rough part of town. And I can tell you some stories on liberty. Liberty is when the Navy lets you go for the evening. You're done working, and then you have to be back at 7 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it is. But I have some crazy liberty stories from Long Beach as well. But this story is about the time I was farmed out from CATC, from the Carrier Air Traffic Control Center, to work in a division that was doing flooring in bathrooms. There was something at the time we called terrazzo, and terrazzo is this thick, sandy liquid that has polymers in it that you spread around the floor. And it seals better than tile. It's nice stuff. I'd like to have it right now, but I don't know where to get it.
It's like anti-slip. It's like really grips your feet and stuff, right?
Yeah, but it's not non-skid because that would be tough to clean. It does have sort of a rough exterior, but it has like some kind of polyurethane, so you can wipe it off really clean, really easy, really fast. And since it gets applied with a trowel is kind of looks like a shovel or something, but it's handheld, and then you put the thick muddy liquid on, and then you spread it evenly. Since it is of that consistency, it completely seals everything. So the metal deck of the ship would be completely sealed from any type of moisture. So they had just sent me to work in this rehab division. So it's all people that I don't work with. None of them are air traffic controllers. They're also all from different divisions. They sent different people while we're in dry dock off to work in different work centers aboard the ship. And as soon as I checked in, people pulled me aside and they said, "Listen, there's this guy here. His name is John." That is his real name. I'm not going to say his last name. His name is John, and he likes to haze new people. We've all been through it, and it's unfair, and it's irritating, and we want it to stop. So what we are asking you to do is, as soon as he starts it with you, we want you to just get him up and smack him in the face as hard as you can immediately, and you will not get in any trouble. We are all supporting this. And I'm talking about, I was in the Navy, we have E1 through E9 ranks, and E7 level is the chief, which kind of is the backbone of the Navy, kind of runs everything. You know, of course we have officers and that too, but the chief even was one of the people that was supporting this idea of me getting up and hitting him in the face. Because they had counseled him, they had talked to him. Yeah, everybody. They were just, the guy was out of control.
I was just say, in case someone missed the word that used haze, can you tell me what is hazing?
Well, hazing is doing things that often involved physical altercation type, or putting you through some type of hardship. Like when you're new to something, like in college hazing, if you want to be a part of our club in college or our fraternity, then you have to drink a bottle of tequila or you have to run up naked on the roof. They make you do things to become a part of the group. So I use that term loosely. Yeah. But this guy, it wasn't an organized thing. This is just a guy who was hazing individuals.
He's just a bully.
And the people,
son of a bitch.
He was a bully.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's exactly right. So this bully had been doing this uncontrolled for I don't know how long, since the ship was in dry dock or maybe before. And the people in the division had been bullied by him. And he was big. He was a big African-American guy with a beard, but he wasn't big in the way of buff. He wasn't ripped. You know, he didn't have big, strong, defined arms. I thought his arms were actually kind of skinny, but because he was large, he was imposing. Mm-hmm. He was an imposing character. Mm-hmm. So they all got together and they said, we're going to have a meeting, and the way we're sitting is kind of like bench seating, and you'd see this often on an aircraft carrier where there's rows because you have small spaces, but you might have to have a meeting. So people would sit kind of like in a baseball game or a football game where there's rows of bench seating, and we're going to seat you right below him. And here's what he would do. He would lick his fingers and rub your ear. Ugh. And then you'd go, oh, and you put your hands up to your ears. He would do both your ears at the same time. And when you put your hands up, he would then take his thumbs and jam them into your ribs. Ugh. That was the big thing that he liked to do. He just thought it was funny.
So the guy that's sitting right in front of him, he would do that too, right?
Yes, directly in front. So the back of my head, he was looking at the back of my head. And his knees were kind of like to either side of my body. And so my ears were presented like directly right, exactly. We were just tempting him to do it. Everybody knew he was going to do it, and he did. So we had a meeting, and the whole division was there. So doors on a ship we call a hatch. And a lot of times on the interior hatches, instead of like a big window or portal or whatever, they would have like a small one. This one had a small one. It was about the size of a fist. So this guy, John, he does that to me. Again, there's maybe 20 of us in the room, in a small room, 20 sailors there. And the chief stands up. Actually, the chief walked out of the room before this happened. And the guy that works for him was a petty officer first class. So that would be an E6. They called him an LPO, leading petty officer. So he would take the brunt of it. You can't really have a chief condoning this type of thing or being there when it happens. So the chief walks out of the room. They dog the hatch down, which means dog is when you close the handles to seal the door. They dog down the hatch, and one guy gets up and puts his hand over that small window.
So it's like, can I interrupt real quick? So that hatch, it's like a door. It's a waterproof door, so that if something happens, they can seal off that compartment, right? So those
exactly
it's completely like airtight, closed door.
Yes.
Okay.
If you get hit by a missile or a torpedo or something, you want pockets of air throughout the ship to keep the ship floating. Okay. You know, kind of like a water balloon or anything filled with air. So So we have hatches rather than doors, and they have these big handles on them that seal it shut, and those are called dogs. And the dog is also a verb. You can say dog down the hatch. Okay. So you use the dogs, and the action of dogging is to dog down the hatch to seal it up.
Okay.
So the guy, John, licks his fingers, puts it in my ears. I can't resist. Of course, I put my hands up by my ears, and then he does it in my ribs. As soon as that happened, the chief walks out the door. Another person dogs down the hatch, just like clockwork, and then puts his hand over that little window. And everybody kind of clears out of the way. The guy who did it to me, he's wondering, what is going on here? So I stood up, and I let him have it right in the face, just as hard as I could. Boom. I hit the guy just like they had instructed me to do. And he was so taken off guard, he wasn't expecting this. He stood up. We got off of the benched seating, and we were on the deck, on the floor, just kind of, I was just kind of flailing at him, throwing windmills at him, and he was backing up. And he reached to his side, and I wasn't really paying that close of attention. I was just trying to hit the guy because he was big and he was imposing. So I wanted to make sure that, I had the advantage. So he reaches to his side and he pulls out a knife and he holds it up. And I found out later, and I believe him, that it was totally true. He was not trying to stab me. He wanted to hold the knife. He wanted to, here's a word for you, brandish the knife, so that I would see him holding a knife and I would back up. But I was already mid-swing with my left hand headed towards him. And so he pulled the knife up first to show me, but then without thinking, to block the punch I was throwing at him. So what that resulted in is I slammed my hand dead onto his knife, which had, I don't know, maybe a 3-inch blade, and it just stuck in my hand, and the whole room froze. It was what we call a pregnant pause. Everybody started looking at each other because I didn't move my hand. It went thunk, the knife went into my hand, and we just held it there. He looked at me, and I looked at him, and then I think mutually I kind of pulled my fist off as he pulled the knife off, and then blood just started squirting. And so we covered it with something that we had, a rag or whatever, and I ran down the passageway. We don't have hallways, we have passageways. I ran down the passageway, or even they might just say P-way. I ran down the passageway to medical, and he was right behind me. And part of when you go to medical for an injury is what happened and was there anybody at fault. And the doctor looked at me. It wasn't a doctor, it was a Navy person. And he said, "How did this happen?" And I turned back and I looked at John, and he's looking at me with big basset hound eyes. And I said, "It was a work-related accident. I hurt myself on a sharp edge." And you could just see John's whole body, just his muscles and everything just relax, kind of display. His whole body was displaying, "Thank God." Because I could have said, "This guy stabbed me."
Yeah, he would have gone to
what
jail,
would have happened
right?
to his career? And he would have gone before the captain's mast. And I mean, that's a violent thing to have happened to somebody, and there would have been a whole bunch of reports, and he'd have been in all kinds of trouble. So I said, it was an accident, and he was just with me, to make sure I was okay and that kind of thing. And so after that, the guy became overly friendly with me. Like anytime I sat down to eat, if he saw me, he'd run over and sit next to me and check, "Hey, how's it going? Is everything okay? Do you need anything? Are you good?" And all that kind of stuff. I had to actually tell him, "Listen, back off, okay? We had a little altercation, and it's over with. You don't have to continue to keep patronizing me or sucking up to me. It's all good." So what happened was he had severed a tendon in my left hand, so I couldn't use my pinky. And the doctor told me I wasn't going to be able to use my pinky for the rest of my life. But then about 5 years later, my pinky just started working. Oh. So I went to another doctor and I asked, how is that possible? And he said ligaments and tendons, the way they are naturally in your body, they will latch onto something. It could be a muscle, it could be a bone or something like that. And then once you're able to make it taut, you know, and slack and taut, T-A-U-T, then sometimes it just happens and they just start working again. So my pinky does work. There's certain motions I can't make with it, but for the most part, anything I need to do as far as playing guitar or, you know, using my hand for anything, it really hasn't been any kind of a handicap for me.
Do you still have a nice scar there on your hand?
I do. I have it's an L, kind of an L-shaped or like looks like a mountain or something shaped scar. And yeah, it's pretty distinct and it's still there exactly where it happened.
Now after that you got in that you had that incident and that was a whole new group of guys that you were just part of the, you know, joining the group, right? Working on the ship. That's
what was strange about it and weird for me because I did not know any of them. And it was really my first day showing up for work. That's what happens my very first day of working. I mean, I didn't even know any of them by, you know, there's 5,000 people on an aircraft carrier at that time. You know, so they weren't even people that I'd seen around and said hi to or anything. They were genuinely new people to me. And by complying with what they asked me to do, it really endeared me to those people. They really, the whole time I was working in that office, they really treated me well.
Yeah, and the fact that you stood up to the bully and then you had like the street smarts to not rat him out. You had double respect on both sides, right? I mean, they probably knew this.
Well, that would have caused, that would have caused a lot of trouble and discontent and people going back and forth and, you know, investigation and all that kind of stuff. When somebody stabs somebody on a United States warship, it's kind of a deal. You know, it's kind of an involved process that would go on from there. So it's really in nobody's best interest to, you know, say, oh, we got in a fight and he stabbed me. And even that wouldn't really have been true because I was swinging at him and he was merely brandishing the knife to thwart me, to ward me off.
Yeah, but I mean, brandishing the weapon is still, I mean, I think he'd still be at fault even if you punched into his knife.
Probably, but you know, things happen in the heat of the moment and you just simply react. Your adrenaline's flowing. There's a bunch of witnesses standing around and they're yelling and they're encouraging me and they're against him. Everybody to a one is against him and for me. So I'm sure it was a hard lesson for him to learn.
Yeah. Did he stop hazing people after that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He was everybody's best buddy. He narrowly dodged a bullet and he knew it. And, you know, that sense of relief and thinking about what could have happened to him, but didn't happen. He was Mr. Nice Guy from then on, for sure.
So you're
I don't think he was really a malicious or horrible guy to begin with. He just thought it was funny when somebody's new, you know, hey, everybody knows me. Nobody knows this guy. I'm going to make fun of him. I'm going to poke him. I'm going to even hurt him. Not hurt, injure, but, you know, having your thumbs slammed into your ribs it's not fun. You know, it's not something you would go to the doctor for, but it's certainly irritating.
That's a great story. I remember it. I've remembered it like over all the years, and it's always you're the only guy I know that has gotten into a knife fight personally.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's true. You see him on movies and television, that kind of thing. But come to think of it, I don't know anyone that's happened to either.
Yeah, I mean, you're lucky. I mean, if you were wrestling, maybe that knife could have gone into your side and, you know, you wouldn't be here, even if he was just trying to brandish it. I mean, you were in a knife fight.
Yeah, I guess a lot of stuff could have happened. We certainly would have had plenty of witnesses. It was a small room. Everybody backed up against the wall. We call them bulkhead. But everyone backed up against the bulkhead, you know, to give us room. And John was shocked because it was like clockwork. Everybody knew exactly what to do. It was pre-planned. You know, the chief leaves the room. One guy gets up and dogs down the hatch, puts his hand over the window, the little window there. Everybody then presses themselves up against the wall as far away from the fight scene as possible. He must have just been flabbergasted. He must have just been amazed. What is happening here? Literally everyone in the room knew what was happening and what was about to happen except him.
Wow. Yeah, so you ended his career as a bully. You slayed the dragon.
I think so. I mean, those are your words. I never think of it that way. I never thought of it that way. For me, it was just an experience and something that happened to me. One of the many things that's happened to me in the Navy, in a Navy career.
That's awesome. All right. Thanks for sharing that story. Yeah, it's really incredible. It's like, and you can really picture it too, because I mean, in that small little compartment on the ship with all, I mean, even if that guy if he would have whipped your butt too, I mean, there were no cameras back then. You're behind closed doors. I mean, that was the real deal.
Stuff happens. That's life.
Yeah.
I really didn't think there's no way he was really going to hurt me badly unless it was, like you said, an accident where I slipped and fell on the knife or something, because all of those people were on my side. If he got the upper advantage for even a split second, I have no doubt they would have dragged him off of me in a second, because it was all their idea. I had nothing to be honest, I was very reluctant. I wasn't saying, oh yeah, I'm going to get this guy. I'm like, I don't know, man. You want, just hit somebody bigger than me. And during an office meeting, you want me to punch somebody in the face? So I was, it wasn't an easy sell for me. I didn't jump at the chance. Oh yeah, let's do this. I was in a new situation with people I didn't know, and they pretty much pressured me into doing it. It was something that if I didn't do it, I would have had a hard time from them. But since I did do it, it was quite the reverse. After that, I could really do no wrong. Any time off I ever wanted, or any situation that I needed help with or anything, people just jumped at the opportunity to help me.
Oh, you know what? Yeah. That's way to make a first impression, right? I mean, it's like you're the hero then after that. And then
first day of work.
Yeah. And then let's wrap up the story. But before we go, do you want to tell people about your podcast that you have?
I have a podcast. It's called the Electric Scooter Podcast. I understand it's very niche. It's only for people who are interested in scooters of the electric type, and it's mainly lifestyle. I don't do reviews. If you like reviews of certain scooter models, there's another YouTube channel called the Electric Scooter Guide, but I am a podcast. I do have some YouTube videos that accompany my podcast. Like, for example, I went scooting in Ecuador, Tampa, Florida, Monterey, California, different parts of the United States and different parts of the world, where I take my scooter or I rent a scooter and film it. But the YouTube videos are merely an accompaniment to my podcast. I'm really a podcaster, not a YouTuber. But you can go to YouTube, look up Dagwood Streets channel if you want to see some of the scooting videos. And if you'd like to listen to the podcast, it's called the Electric Scooter Podcast, and it's available on every platform you could name.
And one last question. Why do you love electric scooters so much?
I lived on and off in Hawaii for 40 years, and I surfed California before I joined the Navy, and I surfed when I was in the Navy in Hawaii, and I enjoyed surfing, and I moved to Las Vegas, and I missed the adrenaline, so I was looking for something to replace that, and I started watching YouTube channels about electric scooting. And there's a lot of good YouTube videos. There are a lot of people like Ben Fox, the Electric Scooter Guide, Ginger on Wheels. There are a lot of YouTube channels you can watch that even if you're not into scooting, just the way they shoot and the camera angles and the music and everything, it's really cool. And I started watching those, bought a scooter. Before you know it, I ended up with 5 scooters. I scoot off-road. I have scooters that go I've gotten up to 54 miles an hour on one of my scooters. I have another one that has knobby tires that I take in the desert, and I climb hills with it, and I do off-roading. And then I have a smaller scooter for traveling, a different scooter for when friends come over. It's just a lot of fun. It's an adrenaline replacement for surfing.
Adrenaline replacement for surfing. And can you tell me can you use words to describe what it feels like to drop in on the wave, and then how that feeling is related to scooting?
Well, if you drop in on a wave, you feel like a hollow feeling in your stomach for a split second, like you're in an elevator, an elevator that's going down really fast. And you almost lose balance for almost a split second. You're not flying through the air or anything, but you immediately go down. And I kind of step back a little bit when I get to the bottom of the wave. We call it a bottom turn. And then you want to keep going back to the wave because that wave pushes you forward and provides you with energy to propel yourself forward. So you're kind of milking that wave, getting all of it out of it that you can. Whereas with a scooter, you're just hitting the throttle. You're completely controlling. There's no outside force that you're dependent upon. It's just twisting the throttle, kind of like a motorcycle. But I do like to go to parks, hills, and places where there are bridges where I can almost simulate a wave. There are a lot of great parks here in Las Vegas. There's a couple I go to where they have big grassy hills, and I can climb up the side of the hill, get kind of sideways, and then come down. I cannot emulate the exact feeling of being on a wave. It's more of an adrenaline replacement than a direct replacement for surfing. So it definitely is different from surfing, but it does provide you that adrenaline. I like, as opposed to a motorcycle, which I have motorcycles as well. I have sport bikes and cruisers. But as opposed to motorcycles, you are standing up. So that is kind of a direct parallel to surfing, is that you're standing up. And I like that feeling. And what I tell people is get in a car, even if it's a convertible, and go 25 miles per hour. And how does that feel? The wind going through your hair or whatever, just the feeling that you get of propelling yourself forward at 25 miles per hour. Now, get on the hood of that car going 25 miles per hour. That's what it's like to electric scoot. That is the huge difference.
Wow. Yeah. I'll have to try it sometime.
Imagine yourself standing on the hood of a car going 25 miles per hour. But a scooter, you do have a handle, handlebars that you can control. And, there are advantages and disadvantages. You can compare it to surfing. You can compare it to skateboarding. You can compare it to riding a motorcycle. But really, it's its own thing. I have friends that are into four-wheel drive, off-roading, motocross, all of those kind of sports, but they get on a scooter and they're like, whoa, I don't feel safe on this thing. Or it's, I have these little teeny wheels freak me out. I can't do it. Your sense of speed is accelerated. It's multiplied when you're standing up on a scooter, slicing through the air. It's just something you just have to try it.
Well, that about wraps it up, my friends. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Streetwise English. You can find more about our podcast at streetwiseenglish.com, and you can find more about Dagwood Streets at his podcast, The Electric Scooter Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Adios, amigos.